This is the Badger247 podcast with your host, Evan Flood.
Kind of, when we got down by 3, I felt like we lost our energy. And that's not like us. And it kind of pissed me off that even though we're down by 3, jump around, we're not jumping around. That's our tradition. This is our thing. And they have more fun than us out there. So that was one thing that kind of made me mad. Although losing makes me mad, but just things that we could have controlled, we didn't. So they definitely heard something from me. I wasn't too nice about it, but I feel like the point got across on what we need to come out and do this week, starting today. And I think that even in the walkthrough, you felt the difference. And you feel that guys are actually taking into consideration what I said. So, it just comes down to discipline and detail. Guys think it's just going to happen out there because we wearing this W on our chest, but it didn't. So we didn't have an edge. It kind of made me mad that I'm trying to get everybody going and people are just looking at me like I'm crazy. I don't like that. So I was trying on defensive side of the ball, and I said, you know what? Let me go to this O-line. They looking a little dead. They're not talking to each other. They're jumping off sides. Try to get some passion in their heads, and we still didn't come away with the win. So
Keanu Benton bringing the heat on a Monday morning press conference. Needed that spark, too. Coming off a disappointing loss. Not the most exciting opponent here in Week 3 with New Mexico State. Definitely woke a lot of us up with some of those remarks. Good show today, I think. Won't touch a ton on Washington State. I think I got all that aired out the first time. Should do a little breakdown of everything that was said Monday, however, specifically with the offensive line addressing the penalties they had against the Cougars. We're also going to bring on former Badger point guard, one of the best to ever do it, Jordan Taylor, is hopping on the podcast today. You may have seen him at Camp Randall being honored on Saturday. He was recently inducted into the UW Hall of Fame, so he's going to talk about that experience as well as some of his memories during his days as a Badger. So I'm excited about that interview. But first, we got to address that Monday morning press conference. Keanu Benton, one of the first ones out, he starts going in on the lack of energy on the sidelines throughout the game. I played all those clips. That wasn't one answer, just to be transparent. That was 4 different questions. Just taking out the questions, obviously, and stacking up his comments back to back to back to back. Sounded like an auctioneer there for a second. 2 ways to sort of look at this. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. We'll probably find that out on Saturday, to be honest with you. Do you keep what's said in the locker room inside the locker room? Or do you hope that guys get enough embarrassment or a kick in the pants from it by going to the media that it completely turns things around? I think as long as you've said it in the locker room and you're not just talking behind your teammates' backs, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it. Like Benton said, he addressed it to his team. It's not anything that they didn't hear already. The most interesting part, I thought, was that Benton went up to the offensive line between the 3rd and 4th quarter and tried to get them going. As we know, the group wasn't playing very well. They had 5 of the 9 penalties on offense. Run game, for the most part, I don't know how to describe it because it finished a lot better than it started. And like I said earlier this week, I thought that Washington State was starting to wear down. But we all know what this unit's capable of, and it wasn't that. So on Monday, they did the offensive line as a group. Normally, you request one-on-one interviews, but I'm guessing due to the sheer volume of reporters who wanted to speak to offensive linemen, and it looked like a lot, looked like everybody requested them, they brought out Jack Nelson, Michael Furtney, and Joe Tittman all at one table. So for that reason, the interviews weren't great. And frankly, those guys don't want to be there anyway, and I can't blame them because they knew what was coming in terms of what types of questions they were going to be, and it wasn't going to be us raving about how good they were. To their credit, though, they stuck it out. They were there a long time. Like I said, everybody must have requested them. But at the end, I was able to talk to Tippmann about what Benton had done and said, not necessarily trying to start a feud between anybody, but obviously I wanted his perspective on what was going on. He's one of the leaders on offense, was a starter last year. I'll ask him the same types of questions I'll ask Nick Herbig, another leader. Like I said, I don't know how much of it was the offensive line was just tired of hearing the same repetitive questions over about their lackluster performance. Tippmann didn't say a ton about it. You know, you could tell, like the rest of them, were kind of irritated to be there. But he had sort of a different take about the supposed lack of energy on the sidelines, specifically from his group.
I'd say it was more just we were focused. We were locked in on what we were trying to get done, and as an O-line, we're meeting during that third quarter break. We're catching our breath. We're trying to, talk about what we can do to have some more success going forward. And I don't think it's as bad as of a loss of life. It's just kind of just locked in and focused on what we got, the issue at hand, and how we're going to deal with it.
So whether or not it's being downplayed, I don't know. Like I said, I think we'll find out a lot more Saturday if this team comes out sharp, crisp, ready to put a lackluster New Mexico State team in its place. Maybe this ends up being a good thing for the Badgers. If not, and you're sloppy for the third week in a row, I think we know there's some serious problems with this team. Because New Mexico State is not good. And that's probably overselling them. Pro Football Focus, take it for what it's worth, but they look at every single snap of every single game, and I think there's merit behind that because there's a lot of people that aren't willing to do that, me included. They rank the Aggies 128th out of 130 teams in FBS. Badgers and Aggies will battle at Camp Randall Stadium at 2:30 on Saturday. One last tune-up before UW heads to the Ohio State University for the Big Ten opener. Got to get things cleaned up and got to get them cleaned up in a hurry. Night game in Columbus. Buckeyes, they've gotten the better of the Badgers a lot over the last decade plus. It's been a long, long time since Wisconsin's won that one. And OSU, for whatever reason, does not have off games against UW like they've had against other teams, especially lesser teams like a Purdue, Iowa, some of those hard-to-believe losses of the past. They bring it against UW. That's enough football talk. You guys are tired of it anyway. It's almost hoops season. Heck, after last week, a lot of you are probably going to appreciate me turning way ahead in the calendar anyway. So here's our interview with Jordan Taylor. If for some inexcusable reason you have no idea who Jordan Taylor is, he is one of the best point guards, one of the best players in Wisconsin basketball history. Two-time All-American for the Badgers. He had a 3.01 assist-to-turnover ratio for his career. Just to put that into perspective, the previous NCAA record was 2.7. During his senior season, he was flirting with I think it was above 3.8 assist-to-turnover ratio. Played in 136 games over his career. He's still top 10 in points, assists, minutes, and three-pointers made in UW history. If you're young and you never saw that Ohio State game in 2011 when the Buckeyes were undefeated, number one in the country, and came to the Kohl Center, look it up, find some clips. There were a lot of parts involved, but what this guy did in the second half against that team, easily one of the greatest individual efforts this program has ever seen, this school has ever seen. 27 points for the game, 21 in the second half. I mean, UW looked like they were going to get run out of the gym. And then all of a sudden, this guy flips on a switch and just takes over. Hopefully that was a good enough introduction for him. Here's our interview with former Badger great Jordan Taylor. So, Jordan, the big news over the weekend was not your induction into the UW Hall of Fame, but the Vikings picked up a big win over the Green Bay Packers. I don't have anybody to talk to about this stuff. I sit in my basement and watch quietly here in Wisconsin. Do you think we're the kings of the North now?
I think that remains to be seen. I think the Packers were kind of missing some guys. I think they're missing like Alan Lazard, right? And they missed some plays that I think they'll make later in the year. But I like Justin Jefferson. Obviously, is dope. Dalvin, dope. We'll just kind of see. We'll kind of see how it goes. Not ready to make that proclamation yet, though.
Probably a smart move. So you were back in Madison. You got inducted to the UW Hall of Fame. What was that experience and weekend like for you, just to come back, be honored, reconnect with a lot of old faces that I'm sure you haven't seen in a while?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was dope. The best part was probably getting a lot of my family there, and then all my teammates that, like you said, I haven't seen in a little while playing overseas. But, obviously try and see those guys as much as possible. So any chance or any excuse we have to get back together is always nice. And then, it was just dope to be back at Camp Randall and on campus and all that. And, it's with COVID. I don't think I've been there since before COVID. So it was just fun. It was good energy, good to be back. Spirit lifting for sure.
How's Coach Ryan just doing in his retirement? And, what were some of the things you guys maybe were able to catch up on?
Yeah, Coach Ryan, he's doing well. I mean, he's golfing, I think, living in California some of the year and in Wisconsin other parts of the year. But Coach, he's chilling. He's I believe, made enough money and just kind of relaxing, enjoying his grandkids as he should and as he deserves to be. And every time you see him, it's just he's always got a new story for you, or a good story for you. So it's always fun to see him. He's always going to try and light up the room and be charismatic and try and talk to everybody. So it's always great to catch up with him.
So maybe it hasn't hit you yet because you're obviously still in your playing career, still relatively young. But, what's just that feeling like to know that, your name, your face is going to be representing UW athletics, for the rest of time? What was that moment like, just to kind of have your name etched in the history books like that permanently?
It's cool because it's like, I think one of the things that you kind of play for, I mean, there's so many good memories playing over the years. When you look back, it's kind of I think every athlete wants to leave a legacy of some sort, and it's harder to do. Like I think we all grow up thinking, when you're young, you think you're invincible and everything's just going to happen right, but it's really hard to put a stamp on the athletics world anywhere. So it's definitely cool to have that honor and the accomplishments that I was able to at Wisconsin.
Yeah, you kind of just touched on my next question, but one thing I always liked about you and your game, you didn't have these crazy measurables. I mean, you were listed at 6'1". You're not a small guy, but you weren't somebody that jumping out of the gym or could just lace up the shoes and have an advantage automatically over anyone. I mean, obviously there's a mental aspect that you probably have and just felt the game differently, but can you just describe, a typical day for you, maybe even going back to high school to get to that level, and then once you got to college to be able to elevate yourself to being one of the best in the country? What's the amount of work that takes that people don't see?
Well, I always dispute people on the measurables thing. The one thing that I have really short arms that always help me back. But as far as like vertical and stuff, I think I always tested well above average amongst guards. Like even at the combine, I always tested. I had like a 37.5 or 38 at the combine. I think I tested out like second overall amongst all players or guards or something like. I can't remember what it was. It was so long ago. So I always challenge people on the measurables. But I have like a 6'1.5" wingspan, so I got T-Rex arms. But either way, I mean, measurables or not, it takes a crazy amount of work. I remember, in college, I'll be in the gym 3 times a day, 2-3 times a day. One thing for me was always trying to be consistent with my shot. And, I was one of those dudes, like I said, with short arms, but, I was quick enough to get people on my hip. And, as my shot got better, it made it even easier to get to the basket, get in the lane. And obviously, probably one of my better attributes was passing the ball and finding guys who are open. So just really honing in, watching film, talking to coaches, talking to people who grew up watching me play. It's an insane amount of research and just physical time, mental time that it takes to get there. And, I think most athletes will tell you that the hardest part about all that is trying to stay consistent with the work through injuries and stuff like that. I've had like 8 surgeries in 10 years, so I was just a bit unfortunate with that after college. But that's the hardest thing, is trying to get the work in, but then take care of yourself while you're getting the work in. I guess that's just part of the work.
Like you mentioned, I think when everybody signs with a school like Wisconsin or a Power 5 school in general, they kind of have a vision of what they think their career is going to be like. Was there a certain moment or time when you knew that you were going to be one of the great ones at Wisconsin, where not only that you felt like you belonged, but you could be one of the best to do it?
Yeah, I don't think there was like a moment. I think when you're young, you don't really even think about that stuff. You just assume that like it's gonna happen. Like you put the work in. I think it's pretty simple. You put the work in, and it's gonna happen. I never really thought. My goal was never really like, oh, I want to be in the Hall of Fame at Wisconsin. It was always to make it to the NBA. And I was like, if you make it to the NBA, you got a good chance at at being in the Hall of Fame and getting all that other recognition or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, oh, like yeah, I'm the best to do it. I think since I was a kid, I was like, all right, I'm gonna accomplish my goals, and obviously didn't accomplish all of them. But like I said, you have a naive perspective of how that stuff goes, and I was fortunate enough to have a lot of things go my way.
So what brought you to Wisconsin in the first place? When you were in high school, I know like Rivals and Scout were just kind of getting going. There's not a lot of, it's not what it was today, with these high school recruitments where you kind of know every aspect of what's going on. What other schools were you looking at, and, what kind of won it out for the Badgers in the end initially?
Yeah, honestly, I committed before my junior year even started. I think I was still 15, or maybe I was 16. And 2 of my high school teammates who were seniors when I was a freshman, they both went to Wisconsin. And I went on a visit. I went to a football game, and Coach Gard would talk to me on the phone for minutes, hours, and before they even offered me a scholarship, he would be trying to help me, talk about what I need to do to play at the next level. I even told him about, I wanted to play in the NBA, and he was like, that's hard to do, but it will help you any way we can. We'll try and give you all the tools that we have to help you do that. And he was just always Coach Gard's probably the most genuine and honest person, coaches for sure, but people in general, that you're going to find, and he's still that way. Which I think what is helping him succeed as a coach now, and I think he's growing as a head coach, which is fun to watch. So yeah, Coach Gard's a big reason, just his honesty and his genuine approach to recruiting me.
Nobody will ever forget that Ohio State game, down 15 in the second half against the undefeated number 1 ranked team in the country. You've talked about that one a ton, but is there another game that still gives you goosebumps to this day thinking about it, or does that one kind of stand on its own?
No, actually the Duke game, I think I only had like 5 points, and Trayvon had like 24 points.
Right.
He played really well, but that was really like, I think that was kind of like I don't want to say the first, but the court, they rushed the court after, and it was like, I remember Pop had a big game, and I got to contribute a little bit. And it was just like, it was just fun. I remember being in the locker room after the game, and Barry came in there. He was excited. Coach Ryan was excited. So that was kind of like the first experience I got at I guess college basketball, the way that I saw it as a kid. Even though as a freshman we won against Florida State in the tournament in a close game, but as when I really got significant minutes, that was kind of the first time that I got a college basketball quote unquote experience.
How about a game that still eats at you to this day? Is there one like maybe you just didn't play as well as you thought you should have, or a loss against a team you guys thought you were going to beat? Is there one opponent that kind of still eats up at you at all?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Butler is easy.
Okay.
Butler, my junior year, is the easiest answer. I thought that just the way the bracket played out that year, we were obviously favorites in that game. Butler was like an 8 seed, and we just didn't shoot well. We probably played one of the worst games of the year. Brad Stevens, obviously, as we have seen, maybe didn't even know at the time, but as we all know now, is one of the best coaches to do it. But still, that game, yeah, because just, I think, again, the older you get, you kind of realize the fine line. Like you said, for guys like myself who aren't, who have short arms and aren't crazy, we're obviously not a LeBron James or a crazy athlete or anything like that. You kind of realize the fine line between reaching your goals and not reaching them. So, and at the time you didn't. So that game always stands out. I was like, well, what if we would have won that game and then we play Florida and go to the Final Four, who knows what would have happened for a lot of us differently.
How about an opponent you always look forward to? Is there just somebody you just enjoyed beating a little more than everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota's the easy answer for me. I have friends, family, all that are all Gopher fans. So, even to this day, I'm still friends with like Trevor Mbakwe and Kendall Shell, Damian Johnson. We have a group chat, and I always still talk to them how trash they are and how they can't compare to Wisconsin. Blah 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 blah. So yeah, it's Minnesota by a landslide.
So did you grow up a Gopher fan?
No, I actually wasn't. I was a Minnesota fan when they went to the Final Four. When they had like Bobby Jackson. Okay. I was young, but they had like Bobby Jackson and Sam Jacobson and Courtney James and all those dudes. So yeah, definitely was a fan then. But once Clem Haskins left, it was not easy to cheer for the Gophers.
So did they go after you in high school at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Dan Munson recruited me, and then when he got fired and Tubby came, my junior year, they did try to recruit me, but I was already committed. So I hadn't signed my letter yet, but they, talked to me a little bit. But obviously, back then it was a little more taboo trying to get guys who were already committed. So they didn't do anything, I guess, crazy, but definitely, had some conversations here and there.
I think I know the answer to this one, but player you hated going up against the most? Does anyone stand out?
A player I hated going up against the most, probably Dimitri McKamey, actually.
Oh, I got that wrong. I would have said Aaron Kraft. I thought that would have been the guy.
No, I actually like going up against Kraft because I remember he was a good defender. He fouls a lot, but he got away with it, which is honestly, it sounds like hating or something like that, but it's actually the sign of a good defender. He's one of those dudes who kind of has every trick up his sleeve as a defender. He's going to grab you when the ref can't really see it. He's going to slide his feet though. So it's like that was almost more of a, you like getting the best of him. I didn't really hate going up against him, but Dimitri McKamey was just a challenge because he was so tough on both ends. Where it was a fun challenge, obviously, but he was a dog. He was a guy that was really an NBA guard at one point and just kind of had some injuries and bad luck go his way, but he was tough.
Back to this past weekend in Madison, were you able to kind of meet the squad this year, or what kind of entailed this weekend in terms of the guys currently playing for the Badgers?
Yeah, I got to meet some of them this summer when I was back for Sam and Alec Ingold's softball game.
Okay.
And then I got to meet some of the recruits this weekend and talk to some of the guys that are there. So it was cool just for a minute. Nothing intensive, but just for a second.
You said before you jumped on that you still keep track of this program as much as you can. What's kind of just impressed you most about, 2 of the last 3 seasons here, winning a share of the Big Ten title?
I think that the adaptation from everybody involved, from Coach Gard to the players, Johnny obviously is was a unicorn for the program, being a guy who left after his sophomore year and had was just a do-it-all type guard, forward, whatever position you want to put him at. And Coach Gard's ability to kind of move away from the staples of the program and I think these past couple of years, he's really put his stamp as a coach onto the program, going away from the swing a little bit and involving some different actions. Again, I think I think one of the things about Wisconsin that's a little disingenuous is, the not talented roster thing. I think Chucky, Johnny, maybe measurable stuff like that, okay. But when you're talking about talent, skill sets, I think you have a lot of guys that can play. And at the end of the day, you're not going to win many games without players that can play with, regardless of what the coach does. So, but just, Chucky's ability to step in as a freshman point guard and really make plays, in different ways, whether it's a step back three or getting in the lane and, kind of showing his range. It was impressive. Obviously, Brad's ability to make shots and be a leader. But, it's been impressive all around.
I was watching your ceremony last weekend, and you kind of had a joke about not knowing what the swing offense was when you came to Wisconsin, and kind of chuckled about Wisconsin speeding it up. Did you wish you could have played in that offense they played last year?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it all worked out for me.
Right.
It was a little joke. But, yeah, I came from, like Matt LePay said, I came from a up-tempo type of style. And that is, I think as players, especially nowadays, there's so much media coverage and basketball is more popular than ever. And, narratives can affect players' careers. And I don't know that. And really their lives. So, yeah, there's a part of every player, I think, who's like, you don't want to be stigmatized as a dude as a slow guy who can only play in the swing offense, because that probably is the furthest from the truth for a lot of guys at Wisconsin. But at the same time, the swing is a good offense. It's effective. It has a lot of good principles. It has a lot of, good basketball principles that teach you the game and teach you spacing and how to move without the ball and things like that. But yeah, for other things, obviously you sit back, you're like, if I could have done that, then, I think that's just human nature to say, hey, if I could have done that, then, the narrative would have been different and yada, yada, yada. You don't dwell on that stuff too much, but I think it's just human nature just to look at stuff like that and be like, oh, that would have been fun.
Chucky Hepburn's kind of viewed as, next up in this program. A lot of people have made some comparisons between the two of you. What were your just thoughts on him, watching him as a freshman kind of run the show and, getting to meet him a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Chucky seems like, I don't know, a lot, but he seems like he's super locked in. I follow his dad on Twitter. I've never got to meet his dad, but he, he's a coach's son. He seems like he's got all the right, he seems like he got the right mentality and the right stuff to make a jump this year. And it'll be a good opportunity for him. It'll be a lot of pressure on him as a sophomore, but he seems like the kid type of dude or type of kid who wants that pressure and wants that responsibility. So I'm excited for him. And again, with the kind of evolution of what they're doing at Wisconsin, I hope that he gets the opportunity to win a lot of games and win championships. He already has one, and then make that jump to whatever level he wants to get to next. So he's a good player. He has a lot of stuff, and I think he is really focused on improving.
Just updating on your pro career, can you kind of update people on where you're playing right now, how your career's going, and have you thought much about maybe what's next in the next chapter of your life, or are you kind of still not even close to hanging them up yet?
No, I'm actually very close to hanging them up.
Okay.
It's year 11 overseas. I'm playing in Romania in Euro Cup. So it's my first trip to Eastern Europe in my career. I played in France, Italy, played EuroLeague in France, played in Italy, played in Japan, been all over, been in Istanbul. And then, moving forward, I would like to get in the media space. I have a podcast called the Role Player Podcast that I work on in collaborations with the Swiss Cultures media page. So yeah, we're trying to build that, and then yeah, we'll see what it has in store. But the idea is to get into the media space.
When you say you're close to hanging them up, how difficult, are those conversations with yourself? I mean, you've been around the game your whole life. I'm assuming there's a balance between wanting to walk away at the right time, but also not wanting it to be too late and maybe end on a negative note. What are those conversations just with yourself like in terms of, how you want to make this decision?
Yeah. I think, like you said, everybody wants to go out on their own terms. I've had, I've had some rough injury luck, over there since, from the time maybe going into my senior year to now, it's like I said, 8 surgeries in like 10 years. So it's been a battle to stay healthy. So for me, it's really just kind of going out, standing on 2 feet. And I think a lot of guys will tell you there's kind of there's kind of a switch, I think, that kind of, triggers, especially when you're overseas, you're away from your family. You still love the game. For me, I always loved the game. I'll play till I'm 60 if I can. But I think there's just this switch where it's like, you know what, I'm ready to do something else. I'm not trying to be, in Romania for 10 months out of the year. So it's just little stuff like that. And for me, that switch just kind of clicked maybe like a month or so ago. So, just looking forward to wrapping up here soon. I'm excited to get back home and start, kind of the next chapter in my life.
And before we let you go, what's just the best part of, kind of playing in all these different places? I'm sure you're, experiencing things that, most of us never will. But also, what's just the hardest part, of being out of the United States for so long, or maybe it's just the adjustment, to a different culture every couple of years?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely, I like different cultures. I'm a social person. So that's actually probably one of the better parts. But I think just missing out on stuff, missing out on friends' weddings, missing out on birthday parties for your nephew, for family members, stuff like that. It takes a toll, after a while. But there's a ton of great things about being overseas. Obviously, you make good money. You're able to kind of jumpstart your life in a way that maybe other people don't have the opportunity to. But yeah, definitely missing out on family events and birthdays, weddings, family reunions, stuff like that for sure.
All right, Jordan, we'll let you get out of here, and best of luck to you on year 11.
Thank you.
So thanks again to Jordan for his time. I think I'm going to wrap up the podcast there. I don't really have much to say for the last word today. I always like to try and throw in some recruiting. There's just not much going on, is there? We're still waiting on a 2023 quarterback. You got to make a decision here soon. I mean, some of these guys are going to get swallowed up by other programs who are in need of quarterbacks or who have a decommit late in the season, as many will do. Wisconsin taking their time on this. Listen, these guys have forgotten more about football and evaluating talent than I'll ever know. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. We're talking about the most important position in sports here. Miles Burkett may end up being the real deal. I don't know. I just would not play this so nonchalant. I'd be taken too. The other part of this, too, is most quarterbacks enroll early, and a lot of the ones Wisconsin is looking at plan to do so. I mean, sort of a behind-the-scenes thing. I don't know what the rules are. There's certain rules of what you can and can't do, but a lot of these guys get their hands on a playbook and a scheme while they're in their senior seasons and start preparing for that. Like, the transition doesn't start in January when they arrive on campus. It really kind of starts soon after they commit. It's probably not a huge deal because you've got 2 freshman quarterbacks. You're not counting on this guy to play next season. But, I mean, we're still talking about the future of the program here, and nobody seems to know where things are going. I'm not in the recruiting meetings. There's probably more to the story, but from the outside view, it looks like Wisconsin's struggling to find their guy. So that's why I say, when in doubt, unless you're sure you get a great quarterback or a heavily recruited guy at the very least, give yourself the ability to potentially erase a mistake and take 2. Whoever you get at this point isn't going to be a sure thing. And based on how long it's taking to offer somebody, they obviously feel the same way. What are we in now? Week 5 of the high school season? A lot of places are still in week 4. Wisconsin starts a little early. But man, you got to do something here soon. Hey, look at that. I said I didn't have a last word, and I did. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back after the New Mexico State game. I know you guys are hoping it all goes well. I kind of liked coming in with some energy after the Washington State game. Wisconsin's a 37-point favorite. They can roll, but I need something to talk about. Something has to go wrong for this podcast to have some juice, or insanely right. I need some juice, so you can hope for a Badger win. Well, hopefully this team gives me something to talk about on Monday, Tuesday. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week.